Welcome, everybody, to another issue of Nerdsplain It. I am, as always, House. I am joined by my three members of the Nerdpocalypse. As always, Dave to my right.
Hello.
Jess and Greg 1,000 miles away.
Hi.
Hello.
How we doing today, guys?
Good.
I'm a little upset about a bad sexual episode.
What?
That's gonna be a bad sexual episode he had last night.
Oh.
Yeah.
It
happened.
Were we a part of it?
Yes.
Up here.
Up here. As always, we want to thank all of our listeners tuning in to us, checking us out, new ones and new listeners, and listeners who are, hopefully this isn't your first episode, but hey, if you like Ant-Man, that's what we're talking about today. We got a phone call left for us on the Nerdsplain It helpline. As always, if you've got a question, you've got a comment, you'll ring us up. The number is 805-669-7230. We're going to go ahead and play the voicemail that our friend Dave from Missouri left us.
Hi, my name is Dave. I'm from Missouri, and I have a question about Ant-Man. With the upcoming movie coming out, and I know there's already one movie out, but I don't have enough detail on what's going on in Scott's life. Can you tell me a little bit more about Ant-Man?
So, today, we are going to be talking some Ant-Man. The call was a little specific to the Ant-Man in the movies, Paul Rudd's character in Scott Lang. He's the second Ant-Man. So we're definitely going to get into that today. I think we're going to start off giving some background to the Ant-Man character. The original Ant-Man being Hank Pym, played by Michael Douglas. Man just doesn't age.
No, his father doesn't age.
Oh, that's right.
Kirk Douglas doesn't age.
Kirk Douglas is it. He's been 75 for 43 years.
Oh my
yeah,
god.
He's still Spartacus. So, we want to get started with the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym.
So,
the scientist. What's up?
When did we first see him? Like, how old is Ant-Man?
1963, I believe.
1960. What issue did he make his first appearance in? I don't remember.
Tales to Astonish.
Oh,
I want to say it was
number
issue
27.
27, that's what it was.
Oh, that's right, because they made the whole joke about it in the Ant-Man movie, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So yeah, we had Ant-Man showing up in Tales to Astonish. I am just losing track of myself here. Ant-Man, Hank Pym, his wife, was it Laura Van Dyne? What was her?
Janet.
Janet Van Dyne. She was the original character known as the Wasp.
Correction. Tales to Astonish 27 in 1962.
1962. All right. So now, was Ant-Man an original Avenger?
He was an OG Avenger, though. I mean, if he wasn't one of the very first four or so, he was in very, very early on.
So, I heard Thor was a pretty new character when Ant-Man came around, and I think the Fantastic Four was only a year old at this point.
Yeah, should have been roughly around there.
Sounds about right.
So he's ancient in comic.
Ant-Man?
Right. Yeah, I think back at that point, like when they first showed it, when Hank Pym first came around, he didn't have your standard, okay, he got bit by a radioactive ant or something like that, and then just decided to become a superhero. He was just a scientist who developed technology to allow him to shrink. And I think that initial story was actually him trying to escape an ant.
No, I read that this week, and
It wasn't a military objective, though, was it?
No. He was just a scientist. I did read that first issue.
Okay.
He was a scientist, and all of his scientist friends were like, "You should stick to practical jokes," and he's like, "No, just you wait." And he shrunk this chair down to a tiny little ant-sized chair, and then he's like, "All right, let's test this on human subjects." Me. But then
I'll do it.
So he shrinks himself, right?
Right.
And he forgot to put the
The reversal?
potion to a place where he could reach, and he left it on the windowsill. So he's like, oh shit. And then what's really funny is like this is like old comic book, right? So like the dialogue is just super cheesy and it's ridiculous, and he's like, oh man, what am I gonna do? And then he falls off the step from the front door and he's out in the yard now, and he's just like, how do I get back?
Oh my god, that's so terrifying.
So he's in like I forget how he gets in. Oh, so these ants see him out and they're like attacking. And he's like, I'm going to run into the anthill to hide until I can figure this out. And like in my mind, I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? Like you're running to the worst place possible.
It's like the last place.
So like he gets in the anthill and these ants start attacking, but there's one ant that's trying to save him.
Oh. So
he saves him. Like he finds this match that is somehow just sticking in the ground inside of the anthill, and he's like, I'm gonna start a fire. That's how I'm gonna get out of here. So he lights a match, and he starts lighting ants on fire.
Oh my god!
So you can save the day with arson and murder.
Yeah,
right.
Oh,
yeah,
it's a good note. Good note.
From there, like he escapes the anthill. He gets outside, and he's like, yes, there's the potion on the windowsill. And he's like, how the hell am I gonna get up there? And then like this big giant mean ant is like, I'm gonna kill you. Of course the ants don't talk. Let me fix that.
Okay.
No, that would be
that
totally outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, there's no way.
That would be the part.
There's no way.
That's a bridge too far.
So then he's trying to figure out, and then this horde of ants is like coming to attack him again.
Right.
And he's like, oh, there's that one ant, the one that saved me. Like maybe he'll help me again. And the nice ant comes and helps him, and then he jumps on his back, and they go up the wall to the windowsill, and he jumps into the beaker, and he comes back to normal size. And then he never stepped on another anthill again because he knew somewhere out there that there was that one nice, kind ant.
Aww. The moral of the story?
What was the moral of the story?
Don't kill ants.
Oh. Because at the risk of not sounding PC, I was going to say all ants look the same.
Oh my.
I think if you hadn't said the part about at the risk of sounding not PC, you would have gotten away with that. Now we have to address that in an apology video later.
Damn it.
So was it so while he was small and tiny, did he still have the strength? Or was it the suit that gave him...
No,
because he didn't have a suit back then.
No, he didn't have a suit. The suit shows up in the second appearance.
Right, so then was he just small?
Yeah, he was just small,
Right.
and he was trying to figure things out.
Right, but he didn't have, the strength and everything.
No, that was a little... I was trying to understand, but they didn't really address too much of that.
Oh.
It's a yes and no thing. The science behind why he's so small and the effect that it has on his anatomy, or more specifically his density, is what creates the strength.
Oh, okay.
Because he's so small, every molecule in his body has an tremendous density because it's so compact. So that's where the sort of strength comes from. Which also creates a lot of in-universe issues when he does anything while he's small. It was also an issue with the movie. But
yeah, we'll get to that.
Was that like the theory from the start? Is where his strength came from?
Well, see, I don't think back then when he was super small, I can't think. I couldn't find anything notable in the comics where they really focused on him being able to punch somebody really hard because he was so. That's not the role that he had, in the Avengers. He was If they were, you had Thor and Iron Man and all the heavy hitters, doing the fighting. Oh, well, this was a problem that could be solved by somebody getting really small and going and messing with something or doing some damage that way. Whether it's you could get super small and go inside their ear and fart real loud. That's going to be disorienting, and then that helps out the other guys.
So. Back, in the golden age of comics, did they really need to explain? Because, now, we're reading our comics, we want a good explanation as to, why
We're getting a lot more
things
wise.
go about the way that they do. Like, we need a scientific explanation.
Now, is this now? Are you talking
Pseudoscience one.
Yeah.
Are you talking comic books or movies and TV shows?
Both. I mean, from like compared to the Golden Age to today, like, did they even have to address it back then?
Because
Like,
I
why
wonder
things
if, like,
happen?
nowadays, because okay, so back in the days, even though comic books aren't cartoons, some people will consider a cartoon when they're not really knowledgeable in that kind of realm of entertainment. So because it was a cartoon, there's a lot of things you didn't have to really explain, like how does the coyote chasing the roadrunner falls off a cliff? How does he keep coming back when he jumped off the cliff and died? There's certain things you didn't really have to explain about that. So in comic books, maybe it
was the same like logic.
Yeah. But nowadays, since they want more realism, well, in order for it to be real, there needs to be an explanation of how.
Right, because, like, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, I think about it now, like, okay, so, of course I'm going to go back to Wonder Woman,
Right.
but, like, we're in a spot where, okay, she needs a power, and instead of just giving her the ability to fly,
right,
it's, you know,
well, how did
the
that
Greek
happen?
gods are coming to her and giving her another gift to help her along her mission.
Right.
So there's an explanation to it instead of just all of a sudden, oh, she can fly, or, you know.
Right. Can't we go back to the days of Mighty Mouse?
No, like what Dave said. When it came to the Golden Age comics stuff, yeah, for a character like Hank Pym, who was a scientist, their reason he could do different stuff was because science happened.
Right.
Dun,
right.
dun, dun.
In the
Oh.
60s, it was in its infancy.
Yeah, like people didn't. There was no need to explain it because you could just make up words. Like, and they what they really did with it is when he, like, his ability to grow, to grow infinitely small was because he had developed the Pym particle. I mean, it was something that was just completely made up for the comic,
Right.
and he was able to utilize. And through the years, he was able to manipulate the Pym particle to give him whatever ability that the story or situation really called for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like I said, through most of Ant-Man's stories, especially mainly when he's teaming up with the Avengers and everything, he's not running around punching people and running through boardrooms and getting into these fistfights. That's not what that character necessarily did. Now, when he was fighting, bad guys on a solo level,
Right.
Sure, it was okay. People had stolen his tech or something like that. They had done something similar, or it was, this other mad scientist is trying to ruin the world, and Ant-Man's going to use his technology and his science to stop him.
Right. But even in his own movies, and then in the new trailer, he didn't seem like I'm going out to fight these guys. It seemed more, I'm going out to try to get back. That's
a completely different character, though.
Right.
Yeah, that's Scott Lang.
Yeah, so right now we're just talking about the old man in the movie, Michael Douglas's character, Hank Pym, in the movies. We'll get to Scott Lang here in a few minutes.
And the interesting thing with Hank Pym in those early days is if you look at 1962 and 63, the first year or two that Hank Pym and Ant-Man are around, a lot of what became the definitive traits of Ant-Man and the Ant-Man mythos all transpired in that time. So you have 62, he first appears. Also in 62, he gets the helmet and the red costume that we're used to seeing for Ant-Man. Okay. And then in 63, we're introduced to Janet Van Dyne, Wasp, who becomes his wife. And also in 63, he develops a new suit to become Giant Man, and that's when he gets really big, which we saw in Civil War, and we'll end up seeing, it looks like, in Ant-Man and Wasp. That is all from 1962 to 63.
Okay.
A lot of heroes, you don't get that much of the core parts of them that early on.
Yeah. And Ant-Man through Hank Pym anyway, through his publication, as the first Ant-Man being around for as long as he was, he went back and forth. He had several different characters. I mean, Hank Pym wasn't just Ant-Man. Okay. And for a while, when he developed technology to grow super tall and big, he was just Giant Man. Like that's what he was. His suit was completely different. He became one of the Avengers' super heavy hitters because of how big he could get and the things that he could do. And like the villain in the first Ant-Man movie that we got, Yellow Jacket, Hank Pym was actually Yellow Jacket for a time, and then somebody else, and
I think actually for a time so was Janet.
I think so. Janet shows up in 1963 when her father is killed by a villain, Cosmosian.
Now, was her father like originally the Wasp?
No. Her father was nobody.
Yeah, that was nobody. And she goes to Hank Pym saying, hey, this bad guy killed my dad. I need you to help me get vengeance on him. Help me get some, let me borrow your stuff. And so he makes her this suit that allows her to be able to fly. And she gets dubbed the Wasp. They get there, she gets her revenge, and she wants to keep doing superheroing stuff. So then they become Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then eventually they fall in love,
and then he starts to beat her.
Yeah, then we get into a dark area in the 70s where
what?
Oh yeah, in the 70s, I think it happened once or twice, but they showed Hank Pym lay hands on Janet Van Dyne.
Now, was he trying to be sneaky to get away with it? Like, did he turn super small and
No, this isn't this is like serious domestic abuse.
Oh man.
Wow.
And then they turned it into a full story arc later in the 70s where he was beating her all the time.
And
right.
this was...
Like, it would have been different if this had taken place in the 40s, because then it wouldn't have been domestic abuse. It would have been some yakety broad needed to be, silenced.
Right.
Sean Connery would have been fine with it.
Right.
But no, this was a very, I think the first hit was actually it was almost like an accidental, but then, it got dark.
And Ant-Man was trying to do everything he could to keep the Avengers from finding out. Because him being an Avenger and being able to help people was really important to him, apparently more important than the sanctity of his marriage.
Right.
And
the Avengers do find out, and they promptly boot him from the team.
And the reason, one of the reasons that happened is because during the Yellow Jacket era, Hank Pym actually had schizophrenia.
Yeah. And
he was on meds for the schizophrenia, and he accidentally backhands Janet, and then that turns into a whole thing where he starts beating her more often and more often. When Marvel introduced the Ultimates universe, which was like the early 2000s, they really ran with.
Oh, so there was that much time difference. Oh, okay.
Well, no, I mean they addressed it in the Avengers comics in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
But then when the Ultimates universe was created, they made that like a staple of the character.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, it was like, this is Hank Pym, scientist, humanitarian, wife beater, as opposed to this is Hank Pym. He's created all this stuff. For a while there, he and his wife had some troubles, but they're fine now.
They're fine now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Wow.
So Jess looks rattled.
I'm just trying to...
Yeah, it's like they kept that under.
And he didn't do it while he was small. If he were small, his density would be a lot greater, and he would have obliterated her.
Right. I mean, that's where we get in. Scott Lang came around in late 70s, 79. I think it was Avengers, looking at my notes, 181. He didn't really do a whole lot as in the beginning, but you find out through his origin story, he had a sick daughter. Right. Yeah. His daughter was very ill, so he was going about, robbing banks, robbing rich people. He was, doing unsavory things to try and get money together to get treatment for his daughter.
Okay.
I think he was he was a thief prior to that. I mean, he wasn't necessarily, and I think how Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had originally intended him to be, or at least one of them did, was it wasn't that he had that sick daughter didn't come about until somebody else stepped in. It's like, no, we got to give him a decent guy reason, a quote unquote good guy reason to be doing these robberies.
I don't know if Stephen Lang was Jack Kirby.
It might not have been.
Yeah, it's funny too because Scott Lang's Ant-Man, he was the one that he ended up being in everything. Like if you had a cartoon about that featured Ant-Man, it was the Scott Lang Ant-Man. When we got an Ant-Man movie, it was the Scott Lang Ant-Man. He's been really the longest lasting Ant-Man and like the most popular.
Right.
And he really updated it for like a modern audience or whatnot. So apparently fans are more okay with a career thief than a wife beater for 6 issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You suck
Everyone
up.
adjust your moral compass. Let's see where it falls.
I mean,
we'll start a poll.
It doesn't matter if you spend your whole life building glorious bridges. You
suck
a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. Play it to the bone.
So in the comics, it was not Tony Stark that created Ultron, as they showed in the movie Avengers: Age of Ultron. That was actually just Hank Pym on his own.
Really?
Yeah, Hank did it on his own.
So
I don't.
How?
That's a fantastic question.
Wait a
I
minute.
don't know the hows or whys he did. I just know that he did.
Okay, so wait, hold on. Now, I've only seen the Ant-Man movie, so this is where I'm kind of tying in this reference. Because in the Ant-Man movie, the first one, the only one that's been released, they mentioned Stark Industry.
Right.
So, was there a lot of Stark Industry stuff within the world of Ant-Man, or was this like a...
Well, in the comics, I mean, I couldn't tell you if they referenced Stark Industries or not, but Stark Industries had literally nothing to do with the creation of Ultron.
Yeah.
That was just Hank Pym. In the movie, they did it the way they did it because, well, they didn't have Hank Pym around. Scott Lang's not a brilliant scientist. They hadn't even done that movie yet.
Gotcha.
And they wanted to do Ultron as the villain, so they had to just change about how he came to be.
Right.
Dave, do you know why Hank Pym created it?
It was mostly just like an experiment. He was trying to create a robot, an artificial intelligence, based on his own brain patterns.
Okay.
And then, as always happens when you have any robot that gains any amount of sentience, it develops its own intelligence and starts to rebel. So, yeah, it decides humans aren't worth saving. And actually, for the longest time, it wasn't even Ultron. It was Crimson Cowl. It wore this crimson hood over it, which is funny because they do make a very subtle reference to that in Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
The first time Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch meet Ultron.
Now, and Ultron, we could talk about Ultron for a little bit here. I mean, Ultron was, he obviously as a robot or as a sentient AI, kind of went the way that we see a lot of sentient AI does in a lot of fiction. He kind of determines, okay, well, why do people need to be around? You keep breaking things. Yeah. I can do this better.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so, and actually this speaks to how integral Hank Pym is to the Marvel Universe as we know it today. Because he created Ultron. Ultron, in turn, created Vision. Vision, as far as the comics are concerned, huge, keystone member of the Avengers for decades and decades and decades.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, Ultron thought he could build a better upgraded version of himself based on his own patterns and Hank Pym's. Ended up being Vision, and it rebelled against its creator like Ultron rebelled against Hank Pym.
And then years later, we get to see Ultron's Oedipus complex showing, because I can't remember when he created her, but it was after he had, Vision had turned on Ultron. Years later, Ultron comes back. I think he was like Ultron 8 at that point, and he created a female robot because he wanted a bride.
Well, he got his Oedipus complex almost right away.
Oh, was it? Well, I knew he was obsessed with Hank Pym.
Obsessed with killing him, yeah.
Yeah,
part of the Oedipus complex.
Right. He creates a female robot called Jocasta, and he wants to have a robo-marriage, and he has Hank Pym, he brainwashes Hank Pym into putting Janet Van Dyne's brain patterns and everything into Jocasta, so then they could have robo babies or live happily ever after. I don't know how relationships work.
He refused to be an incel.
Is that why they
Word
pushed
of the
for the
day.
relationship between him and, well, maybe if you want to call it relationship with him and Scarlet Witch? It seemed like.
Oh, you mean Vision? No,
Vision and Scarlet Witch?
Yeah.
Well, Vision didn't. Vision.
Oh
was,
no! Yeah, we're talking about Ultron.
Yeah, Ultron.
Okay.
So, and then like Vision, Jocasta realizes that Ultron is a monster, and she wants nothing to do with him. So then she rebels against him, but she actually becomes an Avenger as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah, none of Ultron's kids really pan out very well for him.
Yeah.
So back to just Ant-Man. There was a third Ant-Man in the Irredeemable Ant-Man.
Eric O'Grady.
He was he a Scottish man?
No, but I just saw O'Grady and put
that's fair.
Put two and two together.
That's fair. And he was a member of the Thunderbolts for a while.
Wait, what's the Thunderbolts?
The Thunderbolts is my favorite team. It's like the Suicide Squad, but better.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's really like the Suicide Squad, like down to they have implants in their spinal columns that will send massive electric shocks through them that can go from injuring to crippling to killing them if they get out of line.
Oh,
but yeah, it's a government run team of supervillains trying to commute their sentences. It didn't start out that way. It started out completely different with Baron Zemo pulling a ruse on everybody. In like the 80s or 90s. But yeah, the Thunderbolts are a lot of fun, and they've had some really neat members from Elektra to the Ant-Man villain Ghost to the Red Hulk. Deadpool's been a Thunderbolt. The Green Goblin, Venom, tons of them.
wow.
So yeah, if you guys really want to have, if our listeners out there want to hear more about the Thunderbolts, definitely leave us a message at the helpline. We could discuss some of that. It's
What is the number?
8G. Stop making me remember things. 805-669-7230. That's what it is. So back to Ant-Man. So we covered the third. We touched on that third. What's up?
Are you gonna bypass Eric O'Grady and not talk about his his pickup line?
I don't know what his pickup line is.
Oh,
I'm gonna be a superhero.
Yeah. He just
I wanna be a superhero.
stalks women
so
and
freaking bad.
he's like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm a superhero."
And that's what he leads with.
Yeah.
That sounds so weird for someone with the last name of O'Grady to have that thick of an Italian accent.
Hey man,
How you doing?
everyone watched at least one episode of The Jersey Shore. I didn't. I didn't.
Ant-Man went smush smush. O'Grady's only been around for like 12 years, and I don't know that anything I've ever read that had Ant-Man in it, it wasn't Eric O'Grady.
Right.
I've never run into him in any comics that I've read somehow, so I don't know if he just didn't last very long or what.
Probably not.
I think he died in 2012. Like that character lasted 6 years, and then they killed him off.
Oh, they straight up. Oh wow.
Wait, who?
Yeah, and then they
Eric
made a
O'Grady.
life model decoy of him.
Oh.
Because that's your Deus Ex Machina in comics for the Marvel side.
Yeah. Oh, someone's dead. Oh, well, we made a life model decoy of him, and that was the one that died. The real person was actually over in room 6C.
To be fair, DC's Deus Ex Machina is... No, that was them from another universe.
Exactly.
Well, is that a way for them to not really kill off characters?
Oh, exactly.
Yes.
I think that was almost what they were hinting at. Spoiler alert, at the end of the first Avengers, when Agent Coulson dies and then magically shows up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, right.
There's that weird almost throwaway line that Black Widow says to him, like right when they're taking off the helicarrier, she says they're ready for the face scan.
Yeah.
And they just walk away. And then, Coulson dies. He comes back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I think they said something to the effect that what was killed was a life model decoy.
Well, Yeah, and Tony even makes a life model decoy joke at towards the very beginning when Coulson's coming up to visit him. I watched the first half season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. waiting to get to the freaking point of how Coulson was alive, and they never did. And I was like, well, then screw you guys. And I gave up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
They never explained it?
No, not as far as I saw. I'm sure they did after that, but they were taking too long to provide a simple answer, and I got tired of it because I didn't think the show was that good to begin with. So,
right.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I'm not a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan.
No.
It's a show that's only affected by the Marvel Universe, but never affects the Marvel Universe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I heard that the
weird.
events in New York, I think in the first Avengers, played a part in the show, but nothing of consequence from the show in the actual universe, cinematic universe.
Right,
Is it because... See, that's where I'm kind of messed up because, people are like, oh, why don't they put Grant Gustin as the Flash? Oh, well, they want to keep the TV universe separate from the cinematic universes. Yet you have situations like the S.H.I.E.L.D. where the cinematic universes affects the TV show, but yet they don't want to do it the other way around, which is
it's a one-way street. I mean, if there was going to be a movie that was affected by Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think it would have been probably Winter Soldier.
Oh, okay.
Would have had it.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it was built, it was built around so much around S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah. They don't even reference that there's a guy with a flaming skull running around in a classic muscle car that's on fire in the Marvel Universe. You think that'd be noteworthy.
Yeah, just something.
Maybe even just a little bit.
So that's some background on Hank Pym. That's some background on Scott Lang and Eric O'Grady and some of the mistakes that Hank Pym has made. Oh, we haven't even talked about Hope Pym, who was actually in the Ant-Man movies. And I think the relationship between Hope Pym and Scott Lang is fairly accurate.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I'm not that familiar with Hope.
Refresh my memory.
That's the daughter.
Hope was played by Evangeline Lilly.
She's the
playing
Wasp.
the Wasp.
I love her. I want to buy her
a taco.
No, I buy the tacos. You find your own food.
All right.
You're in Florida. There should be some great Cuban food around you. Is it Miami known for Cuban food?
I don't know. Where's Miami?
Nowhere near where we are.
Yeah, Hope Pym being Hank Pym's daughter, she ends up being the Wasp. She was a character called the Red Queen first. Just it sounded a little too villainous, so she picked up her mom's suit and went with the Wasp.
Oh, okay.
And Scott Lang and her are Ant-Man and the Wasp in the comics. They were for years and years and years, and Scott Lang had a very similar role with the Avengers that Hank Pym does, or did. Hank Pym just got old.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Sometimes characters age. Not often, but sometimes.
Right. It happens occasionally. So we talked about all that stuff, and I think we can, address the actual question that Dave left us in the voicemail, in talking about what's going on, or what we think could be going on going into this second Ant-Man film. Where the first one left off, where it's going to be going. Obviously, we've only gotten the first couple of trailers, but I think it spelled out enough to kind of go off of, where they're probably going to be doing a lot of sciencey stuff to try and get back into the tiny universe, the microverse.
The Quantumverse.
The quantum realm, to go see if they can find the original Wasp when she went super too small and couldn't come back. But the villain Ghost is making an appearance.
So I heard this movie is actually taking place before Infinity War?
Yeah.
Before Infinity War, after Civil War.
Okay.
Everything's a war with those people.
Everything. So you know more about Ghost than I do. I know that he in the comics was originally an Iron Man villain.
Yeah, Ghost is pretty neat. For the longest time, there was, and I think even to today, there's no idea who or what Ghost actually is. There's vague allusions that even Ghost has made to his or her history. Because there's also been a question for a long time of whether or not Ghost is a woman. In the movie, we can clearly see that Ghost is a woman. And I think at one point in the comics now, Ghost is a woman. But the original Ghost, for the longest time, almost nothing was known about. Oh. Ghost has the ability to make... we're just going to go with himself. To make himself invisible or intangible, but never both at the same time.
Oh.
And through a brilliant strategic mind and brilliant computer skills, is like an expert level hacker that can do a significant amount of hacking via his own suit. Ghost is tricky. Ghost was a Thunderbolt for a very long time, and it's really hard to tell whose side he's on, because the Thunderbolts had a tendency to have internal struggle. It was like, oh, Baron Zemo and Moonstone are bickering over who's actually the leader. Oh, now Songbird wants to be the leader. Now Norman Osborn. Now Carla Sofin or Moonstone again. Blah, 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 blah. So it was this constant internal struggle. And Ghost just loved to play all sides of that. But Ghost was one of those that if something went wrong and it turned out Ghost was behind it, it was going to take a lot of work to fix it. Never an intimidating presence. Nothing like when... it's not like when Galactus shows up outside of your planet, everyone goes, oh, shit! Ghost is more one of those, hey, my computer's on the fritz, and you hear him cackling as he floats by, and you go, God damn it!
Now I gotta sit on the phone with Dave from IT for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. And there was actually a brief story of Ghost where he was like an IT support person. Like that was part of the background that he sort of gave out.
No.
Yeah.
So not sure at all why he or she is going after Scott Lang or what that character is trying to do, that because I think the movie actually starts off with like Scott Lang on house arrest after Civil War.
Yeah.
So like he had to deal with some legal ramifications while everybody else just kind of got to go home. So that is, I think that's kind of pretty much a wrap for Ant-Man. Hopefully we answered Dave's question, given some background on who the character Ant-Man is, where the lineage of that character came from, the different people who donned the antennaed suit, and kind of given us a little bit of a forecast of what's to come in the new movie.
Yeah.
If there are ever questions we don't answer in these episodes, please call the helpline. We are more than willing to do a Q&A episode where we just kind of get your questions and answer them, even if we've covered the topic in a previous episode.
Definitely. So yeah, all right. Make sure you use that helpline at 805-669-7230. I definitely want to send a huge thank you out to our boy Jerry Wookie Bay for doing a lot of the Ant-Man research for us, since me nor Dave actually had a whole lot of knowledge going into talking about Ant-Man. So Jerry did a lot of digging and gave us some resources to find. So definitely a big shout out to him. Thanks again to Dave for giving us the Ant-Man question. Thanks, you Dave. To all. Thanks, Dave. Thank you again to everybody out there listening. If this was your first episode, please check out some of our other ones that we've had out, as far as The Punisher, Infinity War, talking about comic book terminology. That's our first episode, so if we're throwing around lingo that you're not quite familiar with, check that episode out, and we can get you caught up a little bit. As always, I've been House. My boy to my right, Dave.
Hello.
Down here in Florida, Greg.
And Jess. Bye.
Bye.
Well, before she had an invisible jet, and I mean, if it's cartoons, comics, or apparently religion, nobody looks for plot holes.
Yes.
We're going to issue a lot of apologies for this video, for this episode.
I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, people will tear apart movies, like comic movies and stuff like that, for plot holes and stuff like that. Nobody ever does that for, like, a sermon.
And join us in 6 months when we do Nerdsplain It Church Edition.
Oh, no, guys. I've had enough of that in my life.